Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. As we enter the holidays, as we have been throughout this month, we know that how we perceive the holidays can be different. It could be a time of joy, remembrance, families coming together. But for some, it could be the hardest time for those who are no longer here, for those placemats that are set for a person that cannot come. Today, I'll be wrapping up this month's theme on building a home. Disclaimer: if you are in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help immediately. The crisis hotline in the United States is 988. But wherever you are around the world, I do encourage you to find what resources work for you. I always say this, since I'm just me today, I'm just going to go right into some of the quotes that I've shared with and asked other guests this month to reflect on. That was from George Moore. It says, "A man travels the world over in search of what he needs and returns home to find it." Sometimes, especially when we're in the thick of things, we can miss or lose sight of what's right in front of us. I'm very grateful for the family, my wife, friends, everyone that's around me. It's easy to get caught up on the negative, but sometimes we travel so far to find something that's already close to home. James Baldwin says it this way: "Perhaps home is not a place, but simply an irrevocable condition." Yeah, I feel in some senses it's more of the feel. Like, obviously, we're using the English language between a home and a house, but there is something deeper when we think about the ideal of a home. Revive Ministries does not proselytize, but some of the stories in the Bible from my own experience, I find sheds a little light on this. For me, I think of the story of Jacob and Esau. I know I've mentioned this with other guests, but one thing that I just want to note is not just that he fled from his brother, and the first stop was Bethel, house of God, and there was no structure, but at that time he was home. He was fleeing, but he was home. Later down the story, Esau forgives him and embraces his brother. I'm sure a lot of families out there would love this kind of reconciliation to happen. Sometimes the notion of Thanksgiving, as the states celebrate, is this hope that some broken families can come together. Again, I think about this, and I also think about how we see a home and how it measures to how we relate to this time of year. The only reason I made this focus, building a home, was because I'm in my field, and also just in my experience, home is vital for healing. One of the things I've experienced especially is that when you have a healthy home, accountability becomes less scary. It's a place where you can grow, and we all have so many unfinished things in our lives, and maybe projects, objectives, goals that we want. But with a home, it provides you a safe base to contemplate, to reflect, to plan. One of the questions I asked some of my guests this month was, what component helps in building a healthy home and what components do not? Well, for me, what I've found is that avoidance doesn't help build a home. Another thing that doesn't help build a home is bitterness or silence. Unfortunately, with technology, and fortunately, we are more connected, but we're less connected. It's, I guess, back when cell phones wasn't around, it was more forgiving if someone doesn't call you for several years, or just because you had to be home to call, and maybe you guys just didn't meet up. But nowadays, there really is no excuse. Someone can call or text from anywhere around the world. And I feel at the same time it can make us realize how alone we are sometimes, or at least how it feels. We're more connected, yes, yet less connected. I feel connections has to be at the foundation of building a home. How we connect, how we communicate. Really, at least from my experience, is asking those hard questions. What is the priority? I know I mentioned in a family union or even a church environment, what is the priority? Is it to look good? What is our function? One thing I learned about a home versus a house is with a home, you want to be home. There's no place like home. So, in the church model, there isn't supposed to be walls in that home. And it's supposed to be a place where people can congregate and share. And in the context of faith-based, their love for Christ and Christianity or what have you. It's supposed to be a safe place where you could build as a community. You got strengths and you have weaknesses, but you come together as a family. But, in this question, what component helps in building a healthy home? With the word healthy, communication. Things continue to change, and it's kind of, unrealistic to feel that you'll have it figured out, or this model or method will always work. The fact of the matter is, you may need to keep building your home, and your home may not be always finished. And I'm not just talking about building walls. I'm talking about the less tangible motions of what a home is. Thinking of the idea of building a home, there can be many different types of homes, like I mentioned. Some are more tangible than others. First, you may have your immediate family, extended family, then community, or a group. Maybe you go kayaking, or faith-based family, and maybe a space where there also is room for something less tangible. Like I said before, and I think this quote is, I'm still trying to understand it, but I find it intriguing. Perhaps home is not a place, but simply an irrevocable condition. I've said many times, You could be miserable, and you could go on the most lavish vacation and be miserable there too. So there's many different types, like I said. Now, one question I asked my guests this week, well, this month really, is which home environment has played the strongest role to you today, and what have you learned from it? Well, I would say it's my immediate family, extended family, and what I've learned is it's never simple. Communication is hard. Avoidance doesn't solve anything. And pain will follow. On the faith base of things, I've personally learned some lessons, and I've kind of alluded to them. But one lesson I learned is that you can't just maintain. I'm not saying house needs to be maintained, of course. It's practical. It needs maintenance, but it shouldn't be the only priority. The idea of a home is that it's always unfinished, at least from the idea of the faith-based side of things. The idea is maintaining a home is not enough. But it is an important part of it. But the idea of all this, to even bring up the faith base, because I know all my listeners are faith based, is the idea that the fear of just keeping things as they are can erode the most pristine homes. So the faith base was just an illustration. So if it's always been the best before, and there's no question, it just has to be this or that way, sometimes that fear of losing that can even erode the most pristine, as I said, pristine homes. Voltaire, using some quotes I added today in this episode, Voltaire says it this way: tears are the silent language of grief. One thing about grief, especially those who've lost someone around this time, or just maybe a loss of relationship, whatever the loss may be, the silence and continued silence is what sometimes causes the most pain, from my experience. C.S. Lewis says it this way: no one ever told me that grief felt so much like fear. It's, the existential question I mentioned before. I didn't bring it in this episode, but the whole second law of thermodynamics, which with all its science words, basically says that everything breaks down to its simplest. Basically, we're all subjected to the laws of entropy. So seeing someone who passed away, for me, I feel the fear of my own mortality, I guess. And besides that, grief also has that fear of connecting, and it comes in many different forms. It's usually not as linear. There's a Jewish proverb, I find that funny, I found this. It says, what soap is for the body, tears are for the soul. I find that interesting that it correlates that there's something soothing, about being able to express yourself. And sometimes sadness comes in tears. But with all this bleak conversation about loss, and it is one of the conversations that a lot of times happen during this time of year. We just went through, and we're still not quite sure, but we went through COVID. A lot of people have lost someone or know someone who has lost someone from COVID. And so you have an extra placemat. Thanksgiving's coming around and things are so busy. You're so busy yourself. It can be hard to, allow yourself to go through those emotions of loss. But it is a process. Marcus Tullius Cicerio said, "The life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living." A lot of times you hear, especially in funerals, the celebration of so-and-so. Celebration of the life of so-and-so. Memories. Sometimes in families, especially later as you grow, and you may see that things are a little bit harder, things are a little bit messier. Sometimes our memories is all we have of those who are not here. I think Helen Keller says it this way, and let me just preface this by grief takes time. If you are needing help or you are in crisis, I do encourage you to find what resources. But if you feel like that it's too much to bear, and you're in the United States and you're afraid of harming yourself, I do encourage you to call 988 National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Having these thoughts doesn't make you a bad person. What it does make you is someone that needs help. So I do encourage you to find the help that may be there, may be accessible. Tell someone, call your friend, call your family member. Find someone. Because, at the end of the day, we're all trying to make sense. We're all moving forward. We're all trying to process. We're all trying to build that home. There's never a moment, I would say, and I that we have or will figure this all out. Whether you're faith-based or not, home is something that is hard because it changes. People grow up. People leave us. But remembering that you have resources out there, you have people, reminding yourself that. And it doesn't have to be your immediate family. It could be someone a friend. But find the help that you need. Going back to Marcus Cicerio, the life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living. But Helen Keller always kind of amazes me with some of her insight without much sight that me and you take for granted. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. So I encourage you, as you build a home, as you try to sort through whatever you're going through, don't minimize. Take time to process things. If you've lost someone, process that. If you need help, get the help. Don't think about what other things or it's going to be inconvenient, or get the help now. Also, take time to process what's important. Prioritize what is important to you and take those little steps towards that goal. Building a home, I feel, at least from my experience and also just experience in general, is both tangible and intangible. So you could have people around you physically, proximity, but you could feel alone. You can feel lonely. Have those conversations. Communicate. Find ways to communicate. And please don't avoid. My final thoughts to all this is building a home takes work. It doesn't just take work to buy it. Obviously finding a place monetarily, that takes work to build up funds. But the home after you get the place, wherever home may be, takes work to maintain and to build it. What's important to you? And as we enter these holiday seasons, be mindful of those around you. Be kind to one another. Because at the end of the day, your correctness won't bring them back. And also, remember that you can't build a home alone. So I encourage you to reach out. Find those people that you trust. And try to build on it. There's no step 1, step 2, step 3. Part of what I say may be useful and maybe not. Because everyone's culture, everyone's situation is different. But I do encourage you to try. I do encourage you to find that home. And also, don't avoid. Communicate. Do the best you can. And list what's important to you. Not what is important for everyone else, but what's important to you in regards to a home. I just want to share with all those listening, remember to stay updated with all things Revive Ministries through its various platforms, reviveministryfl.com. I do believe there is also the YouTube channel, and we have Facebook updates, and obviously the website will be the best place to kind of get connected to all those other platforms. But this is goodbye from Revive Ministries Podcast, leaving with this last quote. It's an Irish proverb, says the longest road out is the shortest road home.